Madhai Lechevich, the Madhai the tzaddik who lived in the town of Lechevich, was a very great tzaddik, and when it came Pashas Vayeitzei, he did not say any Torah for the Talmud. He didn't find it necessary, he said. When we learn Pashas Vayeitzei, and we see Yaakov Avinu going to Lavan and the environment in which he found himself, an environment of Tumah, and he raised a family there, had 12 children, and amassed wealth, all the flocks of sheep and animals that he had, and the gold and the silver, which he amassed all in Haran. And he was the tzaddik, dealing with matters of Olam Hazeh, and he remained Yaakov Avinu. In fact, he grew in Haran more than in Eretz Yisrael. So when you see a parsha like this, which tells us how a tzaddik lived in Haran in spite of all these adverse conditions, conditions which aren't so fitting and for Avdas Hashem, for being a tzaddik, and he remained a tzaddik. In fact, he grew a tzaddik under these conditions. So what's more to say Torah? What more do you need? Just learn the parsha and become a Talmud of Yaakov. Become, get excited about Yaakov and try to emulate him. That even in your earthly matters, you shall be a Neivad Hashem. Yaakov Avinu grew Haran. The Zohar Kadosh tells us a very remarkable thing. I've seen it in Rab Shamash Nefel Hirsch, but actually it's a Zohar, that when Yaakov first left to go to Haran, he left Eretz Yisrael, and he was on his way to Haran. Vayivka b'makom. He encountered the place. He met the place. In other words, Vayivka means the actual meaning of Vayivka means he was in for a surprise. Vayivka. He was astonished. He met and saw something which was astonishing. And what did he see? He saw the Malachei Elokim, all the hosts of the Malachim, Hayvan v'Yordim, ascending and descending the ladder. And it was a surprise for him. He was intrigued by it. And he saw the Malachim who carry the heavenly throne, the Kisei HaKavod. It was an experience for him. 20 years later, when he came back from Haran, it's the last two psukim in Vayeitzei. V'Yaakov halach l'darkei. Yaakov went on his way, going to Eretz Yisrael from Haran. Vayivka'u b'ay Malachei Elokim. And the Malachei Elokim met him. They encountered him. They were surprised by him. He was the treat. It's the exact opposite. He was bewildered at his first meeting of all the hosts of Malachim carrying the Kisei HaKavod. 20 years later, he grew to such heights that the Malachim were bewildered beholding Yankov Avinu, the great Yankov, look how he grew in Haran, how he reached such heights which they didn't expect, which makes him far greater, far more lofty than the Malachim, than the angels. So that's what Yankov Avinu accomplished in Haran. Dealing with earthly matters, with raising a family and amassing wealth. Chazal tell us, ha'avos hein merkava. The avos, our fathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they are the merkava. The merkava is the chariot. That is which Yecheskel Hanavi saw in the first parak of Yecheskel, which is the Haftarah of Shavuos. He beheld the heavenly chariot, he beheld the Kisei HaKavod, and the Malachim which carry the Kavod, as if it's carried on wheels, the Eifanim, the wheels, and the Malachim and the Srafim, and how the whole array is up in heaven, carrying the heavenly throne upon which Kaviyachal, the splendor of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is seated. And this is the Merkava, the dwelling place of Hashem. The Avos are the Merkava. The Avos HaKadoshim, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, they were the dwelling place of Hashem. He always dwelt upon them. Every moment of their life, without any interruption, was Kedusha, was Dveikus, was attachment to God. Not for a moment did their mind wander off from the being conscious of the fact that there is a God above and that they have to serve Him and worship Him and be attached and actually try to become part of Him, to become fused with Him. Achdus, Yichud, fusion. This is what the Avos were. Every moment of their life was a continuation of worshipping and serving Hashem in the highest possible manner. The Avos are the Merkava. Hashem always dwelt on the Avos as if they'd be His Kisei HaKavod, as if they'd be His heavenly throne. And this is what Yankov Avinu saw in his dream. He came to the site of the Beis HaMikdash, and he dreamt, V'hine malachi Elokim ayolim v'yerdim bai. He is a ladder. Yankov alone is the ladder upon which the malachim, upon which the angels ascend and descend, depending on his behavior. If Yankov is going to behave accordingly, if he is going to do the will of Hashem, if he is going to be davuk, if he is going to be attached to God, so he, with himself, raises the entire Bria, the entire creation, with all the Malachim, all the Srafim. Malachi Elokim Oilim, the Malachi Elokim, they ascend, and Yoredim, they can also have a descent by through him. This is how the Sfarim explain this pasuk, that Yankov Avinu, the Tzaddik, is in control of the entire creation. The creation will rise with him or fall with him, depending on his behavior. So this is what Yankov Avinu saw in the Chalaim, and more than that, V'hine Hashem nitzav olav, that Hashem dwells on him. The Tzaddik is the dwelling place of the Shechina Hagdosha, of godliness. And if somebody would be Zeich, if somebody would be fortunate enough to behold the Tzaddik, and his eyes would be pure enough to understand what he beholds, he should see and understand that Hashem dwells upon the tzaddik. The purity of Hashem, the splendor of Hashem, the holiness of Hashem is on the tzaddik, as if he'd be the heavenly chariot. So the Avos are the Merkava. Being that they are the Merkava, every moment, every action is towards Hashem, is to this end, that they should be even more and more attached to Hashem. So, Vayeitzei is a very interesting parasha. Yankov is the greatest of all the Avos. He is the Bechir Shebi Avos, the chosen one of the Avos. He is the choice of the Avos. B'nai Yankov Bechirav. We are Yisrael, the children of Yankov, the choice of Hashem, the greatest one of all the Avos. By the Avos, we find holiness, we find Mesiras Nefesh. Avram Avinu subdued his own wishes, his own feelings, to do the will of Hashem. He left his family. He left his native land and went to Eretz Yisrael, to an alien country, just because Hashem told him so. And he left everything behind. And he was Meisa Nefesh for Hashem. He gave away his life, his wish, and for the sake of Hashem. And he went through 10 nisyanos, 10 tests, and to the final climax, ready to offer his own beloved son on the Mizbeach by the Akedah. This is the story of Avraham. By Yitzchak, we also find out he was ready to give away his life to Hashem on the Akedah, and he was an Aylat Mima. He lived in Eretz Yisrael. He was Kadesh. By Yankov, we don't find any such thing. We find Yankov Avinu dealing with earthly matters, as I mentioned before, raising a family, making money. And Yankov is the greatest one of all. B'nai Yankov Bechirav. He is the Bechir, the choice of the Avos. Because Yankov Avinu did something, there are people that they would also give the Rabbeinu Shalom, they would give God his due. They will eat, they will drink, they will enjoy life. They will also understand that you have to give something to God. And that really is the Goyish way of worshipping God. The Medrash says, Uri Tzafain Uvoi Saiman. This is a pasuk in Shir HaShirim. Uri Tzafain. You Umay Sa'ayalam, you nations of the world, you shall be outrooted. Tzafain. You who are Makriv, Kabanais and Tzafain. You who bring your offerings in the north. Uvoi Saiman. Come, Yisrael, you who bring your offerings in Taiman, in the west. And the pshat in this madrash is, there are two types of kabbanas. Kabbanas that are totally burnt on the altar. These are kabbanas oilos. A carbon oila is a very holy carbon, a very holy offering, and it's completely burnt, and nothing is left for people to enjoy, to partake. This oila is very holy, and it's Kaddish Kadashim, the holy of the holies. Kaddish Kadashim, a certain kind of kabbanas of this type. The place to slaughter them, the shechita, is in Safain, in the northern part of the north of the Mizbeach. Then there are shlamim. Shlamim are offerings that part of it goes on the altar and is consumed in the fire of the Mizbeach, but most of it is eaten by the Kaihanim and by the family and the friends of the one who offered this carbon. This is a carbon shlamim. A carbon shlamim is not shchitasan batzafain, and is not nechal ba'azara. You don't have to shecht it in Safain. It isn't so holy that you must make the shechita in the holy part of the Mizbeach, in the holy part of the Azara, which is north of the Mizbeach, because you can shecht it all over, even in Darim, even in Taiman, and you don't have to eat it in the Azara, in the yard of the Beis HaMikdash. You can eat it in all Yerushalayim. In other words, you can make a feast out of it. You can eat it in Yerushalayim, call your friends, families, poor people, the Kayanim, the Leviim, make a party and eat the meat of the carbon shlamim. Now, the halacha is that we do not accept any carbon shlamim from a guy. A guy can only bring a ayala. A Jew can bring a carbon shlamim. In fact, the Jewish nation became a Jewish nation, and they were transformed from being B'nai Nayach, from being like Goyim, into the Jewish nation with the carbon Pesach, with the Pesach offering. And the carbon Pesach was something which was eaten, not consumed on the fire. So the pshat is like this. A guy cannot serve Hashem with his earthly pleasures. What's for me is for me, and what's due to God is for God. He wants to have a certain good relation with God. He's going to fast. He's going to inflict punishment upon himself. He's going to suffer, and the like. A Jew is being taught something else. His guf has kedusha. He can eat l'shem shemayim. He can eat for the sake of Hashem. He can enjoy life for the sake of Hashem. He can go through all the functions of life. He can be wealthy, all for the sake of Hashem. Because even his guf, his body, the earthly part of him, the physical part of him, could also be harnessed to the service of Hashem. He can dedicate his enjoyments and joy, and it should be for Hashem. That's what a Jew can do. That's what a Jewish neshama and a Jewish guf is. And that we find in vayeitzei, Yankov Avinu. Yankov Avinu, if you would read the parasha of Yankov in vayeitzei, you would think he's a career man. He wants to make money, he wants to get places, and he was a success. He came back a rich person, a wealthy person. But Yankov Avinu worshipped Hashem and served Hashem with earthly matters. his earthliness, his hergeshim, his feelings, his emotions, his joys were all dedicated to God, Baruch Hu. That was Yankov Avinu. The Catholic, if he wants to be a devout Catholic, if he wants to be a priest, he's not supposed to get married. He's not supposed to deliver himself to the devil. But by a Jew, very interesting, is the first mitzvah of the Torah, to get married and have children. It's a different kind of a concept altogether. Our earthliness is dedicated and is hallowed. It's kaddish. It becomes mekudesh through our service to Hashem. And this is what we find in vayeitzei. That the Avis were the Merkava, or the Avis were the Merkava, this is true. But where do we see V'hinei Hashem Nitzav Alav, that Hashem dwelt on the Avis? That we find by Yankov. So whatever Yankov did was all for Hashem. Yankov comes to Haran and he sees Rachel. Vayishak Yankov es Rachel. And Yankov kissed Rachel. Vayisa es kailei vayevk. And he raised his voice and he cried. He wept. This is a very peculiar pasuk. He kissed her and he wept. And these are two emotions which are really opposed to each other. You know, when there is chesed, there isn't din. When there is love, there isn't any weeping. What really happened is like this. Everybody attains certain heights in Avdas Hashem. I'm going to tell you things about Yankov, but that doesn't mean that you or I can go home and decide we're going to be like Yankov. It's too high for us. We can't attain that. We cannot be the Avis HaKadoshim. However, a Jew must say, Chazal tell us, I want to have some kind of a relation, of a connection, a negiya. My minds and my deeds should at least touch the deeds of Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yankov. We cannot be Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yankov, but we can be miniature Avram, Yitzchak, and Yankovs in our own way, according to our own abilities. We have to be mikadesh. We have to hallow our earthly temptations, our inclinations, our physical functions. We have to be mikadesh them, eat like a yid, like a Jew should, enjoy life like a Jew should. We're not supposed to be like the Gamach, like the priest, who has to deprive himself of earthly pleasures. No, we have to function like a human being should function, and whatever pleasures there are in human biological life, we have to be mikadesh them. We have to make them holy to Hashem. So the Yankov, if you would buy a siddur to daven from, and it would cost more than $6, you know, those more expensive siddurim, so you would find in the beginning a certain prayer called Tikkun Chatzais. We know of 3 prayers: Shacharis, Mincha, and Ma'ariv. But very special tzaddikim have an additional tefillah, tikkun chatzais. The rooster awakens them at midnight, or the modern rooster, the electronic rooster, whatever it is, and they get up and first if it's in a weekday, not on Shabbos and Yom Tov, they will first sit down on the ground, put ashes on their head, lament the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, and afterwards they would arise and say, yes, but I am happy that I have a God who cares for me, who cares for Klal Yisrael, who cares for the world, who has a planned destiny for the entire Klal Yisrael, and ultimately it will bring us to Simcha, to Binyan Beis Hamikdash. And then he says Mizmayrim, then he says songs which speak about the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash, and he's happy. Then he learns Gemara or whatever he learns into the morning, goes, drinks a cup of coffee, goes to the mikveh, and goes ahead to Shachris. Now this is how tzaddikim spend their night. I'm not recommending this for everybody. It can ruin your next day if you're not conditioned for this. But this is how tzaddikim spend their night. They start off with tikkun chatzais. So in tikkun chatzais, in those sidurim which cost $6 plus, so in those sidurim you're going to see that tikkun chatzais is divided into two parts: tikkun leya, tikkun rachel, and tikkun leya. First is tikkun rachel, which I won't explain now, but it's something about Rachel. And we weep about the Beis Hamikdash, and this is supposed to be Mesakin Rachel. A certain Rachel, besides being the name of Rachel, our mother, Rachel is one of the names of the Shechina Haggadosha, of the holy godliness which dwells upon Klal Yisrael. Afterwards comes the simchatika part, the happy part, which we're allowed to say even on Shabbos, and that's tikkun leya, the leya part. So exactly what that means, we won't go into now. However, it does teach us that Rachel and Leah aren't plain people that have these names. Rachel stands for something. Leah stands for something. Rachel wasn't just a girl whose name was Rachel. And when the Torah says she was Yefas Taya v'Yefas Mara, she was beautiful, so we'll take it only in the physical sense. Rachel is beautiful because she expresses holiness, which is beautiful. She represents the Shechina in the form of Rachel. Leah is also beautiful in her way. Eine Leah Rakais, her eyes are soft, because she represents a certain aspect of Shechina and presents herself with soft eyes, crying and weeping and being mispalel for Klal Yisrael. And Yankov the Tzaddik, Yankov the Navi, Yankov the lofty heavenly man, who is the Merkava to godliness, who is the Kisei HaKaved himself, when he sees Rachel, he doesn't see the woman in the sense that a physical person who is only physical, a mundane person, would see a woman. He sees Rachel, who represents the Shechina. we know of tzaddikim even not so long ago that on Tisha B'Av at night by the Kaisel Maravi they saw a beautiful woman clad in black, and that was the Shekhinah. This type of an appearance of a Bechina of Rachel is not the type which would arouse earthly temptations. On the other hand, it would arouse and stir up heavenly emotions. To know to get a different thing. So when Yankov at first met Rachel and he saw what Rachel is, he became astonished. So much kedusha. He sees a person containing so much loftiness, so much ashras ashchina. She is the seat of the Shechina. She is Rachel. And like a Jew who in the warmness, in the height of his emotion, would just take his tefillin or his tzitzis and kiss it, because it stands for Kedusha. Vayishak Yankov is Rachel, so Yankov kissed Rachel. And then Yankov realized, and the people around him started jeering, and he's trying to bring immorality into our place, these hypocrites were saying. And when he heard that, and they misunderstood his understanding of what Rachel is, he felt such pity and compassion on them. Vitzא, he wept. Why don't they understand like I understand what Rachel is? And Yankov worked for Rachel and for Leah 14 years, which correspond with the 14 years which he learned Torah in the Beis Medrash of Shem V'Yevel. Because learning day and night without sleeping one wink at night, 14 years without sleeping. The first time that he slept after those 14 years was at the Makom HaMikdash. Vayishkaf HaMakom Hahu. And Rashi says there he slept. But prior to that, the 14 years before, he didn't sleep. Because these were 14 years of preparation, of conditioning his body and cleansing it and purifying it, that he should be able to work an additional 14 years for Rachel and Leah and for what they stand for and what they represent. So, Lavan, he doesn't understand such things. He sees Yankov Avinu volunteering to work 7 years. That was Yankov's offer. It isn't Lavan's suggestion. Yankov offered it himself. Vayayma Yankov leLavan, Evadcha sheva shanim b'Rachel bitcha aktana. I'm going to work for you 7 years for your daughter Rachel. Because he knew that she is so kadosh that in order to attain her and to be able to be wed to Rachel and live the type of a life that he aspired to live, he will need 7 years of preparation. Vayiyu b'yainav kiyamim achadim, and they were in his eyes like several days, behavasei oisa, because he loved her. Now, this is not the way we experience in our life when we are yearning and hoping for a certain desirable moment. When something is a week away and which is very pleasurable to us, and we're hoping it should come, it sounds to us like years. Every day it feels as if a year is passing. By Yankov it was just the opposite. It was 7 years, and to him it was like days. Because he was yearning for something ruchnius, for something heavenly. And the preparation in itself is Avdus Hashem. You know, if anybody of you probably experienced this. If Sukkot is coming, and you're building a Sukkah, you enjoy the building of the Sukkah in itself. The building of the Sukkah isn't a preparation for Sukkot. The building of the Sukkah is Avdus in itself, is service to God in itself, and you enjoy it. And he enjoyed those 7 years of working for Rachel. That time flew. Oh, if I can only work more for Rachel, if I can only work more for Rachel. It's heavenly, it's godliness. This is how Yankov felt about it. And then he was married to Rachel, and he worked, but he got Leah. And then he decided and offered to work another 7 years for Rachel. And he worked 14 years for Rachel. And he was Zeiche, he was fortunate to have Rachel and Leah as his wives, as his partners. And Lavan looks upon this. Lavan is the exact opposite of Yankov. He is earthliness. He is Satan. He is temptation. He is sin. And Lavan is steeped in tumah. And Lavan sees, and the way I explained, I think, Parshas Chayesara, the way Lavan looked at the behavior of Rivka and Eliezer, and he didn't quite understand what was going on, and they were subjects of ridicule to him. Like crazy. That's how Lavan looked at it. So Lavan, when he saw the behavior of Yankov and how he wants to give away 14 years of his life for Rachel and for Leah, how did he look upon Yankov? Yankov is just steeped in sin and temptation, and and there's nothing existing in Yankov's life except the woman. That's how Lavan looked upon Yankov. So after the 14 years, when Yankov wanted to go home, so Lavan said, stay longer, you know. And he said to him, declare your fee. What do you want in order to stay longer by me and work for me? So the Yalkut Reini says a very interesting thing. Nakva is the iciest nekeva. He was hinting to him. He says, you worked 7 years for one nekeva, 7 years for one woman, and 7 years for another woman. Well, there are plenty of women around here. I can give you a third woman. Maybe you want a third woman, nakva, nekeva. Which woman do you want? And then work for me for that woman. Because this is how Lavan understood Yankov. But what does he know about Yankov? How could he ever understand Yankov? Yankov the Kadosh. Kadosh Yankov. When we want to speak about the Rabbeinu Shalom, how holy God is, so we say, Kadosh Yankov, you holy one of Yankov. Because only Yankov was the one who was able to, among all other mortals in this world, he was able to be the seat of Kedusha. No one like Yankov Avinu. He was Kadosh, 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 removed from all earthliness. That was Yankov. He was the Merkava. There are 3 brachas in Shemona Esrei. The first one is corresponding to Avram Avinu, Magen Avraham. The second one is Yitzchak, Gevura, Ata Giba La'ilam Hashem, Midas Adin. And the third one is Yankov, HaKeil HaKadosh, the holy God, because Yankov is holy. Yankov is removed and purified from all earthliness. He is just holiness. He looks at these things all differently. Everything by him is Avdus Hashem. And then Yaakov raised a family in Haran. And then he made a fortune. And he got animals and animals and animals. So many sheep. And it seems that he was trying to get Lavan's sheep and procure them for himself. And from the pashtus, from this learning on the surface, the way we learn the psukim, it seems that Yaakov was quite successful, and he employed trickery in getting those animals and getting more and more of what really belonged to Lavan. And he used certain devices with carving the sticks, and so that the sheep should have offspring with the stripes and spots, that which was designated as Yaakov's sheep, which would belong to him, Akudim, Bekudim, Brudim. Most profound limud which we have, which isn't for everyone, it's only for the few, are the writings of the Yeri HaKadosh. And the Yeri HaKadosh has a chapter in the vayeitzei, that's his sefer, which is a very, very difficult sefer with just plain Kabbalah. So one of the chapters in the vayeitzei is called Perek Akudim Nekudim Ubrudim. Now, I won't think of ever trying to discuss that Perek of the vayeitzei, the Perek Akudim Nekudim Ubrudim, but the mere fact that one of the prakim of the very lofty Kabbalah of the Yeri HaKadosh is called with this name gives us a little insight into what the Akudim, Nekudim, and Brudim of Yaakov Avinu was. And he elevated the world with his Akudim, Nekudim, and Brudim, like the Bnei Yissaschar says. Akudim, Nekudim, and Brudim is B'gematria Shabbos. Something else altogether than we could imagine. So, Yaakov Avinu tried to get the sheep of Lavan into his possession. Who were those sheep? What kind of sheep were they? Were you ever a sheep?
Not that I know of.
Well, you're going to know of it. We were all sheep. Every Jew living today, or who has lived, or who will live, was once a sheep by Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu already took care of us. He raised us, and he took us, and he grazed us, and he took care of us, and he has provided whatever we need for our stay in the Rabbeinu Shloim's world. Every Jew was once a sheep by Yaakov Avinu. How do I know? Because the Zohar HaKadosh says so. And it's merumas in the Medrash. The Medrash says that Yaakov Avinu had 600,000 sheep. Another version of the Medrash is that he had 600,000 herds of sheep. And that's more understandable, because there are 600,000 Isius in the Torah. We once talked about this. And every Is is a Jew. Every Jew is assigned to one of the Isius in the Sefer Torah. But there aren't enough Isius to go around. but there are herds of Jews all belonging to one ice. So there are 600,000 herds of sheep called Yismach Moshe. And we call him the Yismach Moshe. This Yismach Moshe remembered everything that happened with him in previous Gilgulim, when he was in the previous trips upon this planet. And because the tzaddikim remember, we don't remember, because we come upon this world to be misaken ourselves, to perfect ourselves. And if we would remember, it would take away our bchira, our choice would have to be tzaddikim if we remember what we were before. But the big tzaddikim will come upon this world not because of themselves, but for the purpose of others, to guide and to teach others. They remember. The Yismach Moshe was one of them. We have a sefer from the vayeitzei, the grandchild of the Yismach Moshe. And the vayeitzei was a very fond grandchild, and Yismach Moshe told them many interesting things. And the Yismach Moshe once told the vayeitzei that he remembers how many times he was upon this world already. The Yismach Moshe remembered when he was in the Midbar, and he related what happened by the machlekes of Kairach v'Adasai. And the vayeitzei, the grandchild, said, "And Zaidi, you were certainly on Moshe Rabbeinu's side, weren't you?" So he says, "No, I was neutral." So the vayeitzei says, "Zaidi, you were neutral, grandfather. You were neutral against. You weren't siding with Moshe." So the Yismach Moshe answered him, "If you would have been there, you would have been siding with Kairach." Because Kairach wasn't a criminal, he wasn't a degenerate person. Kairach was a big tzaddik. You have to be careful. Even big tzaddikim have to be careful. Kairach had Ruach HaKodesh. Why did Kairach go out and oppose Moshe? So Rashi says, because with his Ruach HaKodesh he saw that Shmuel and the other tzaddikim of the Bnei Levi are going to descend from him. So in the midst of his machlekes upon Moshe Rabbeinu, he was employing his Ruach HaKodesh. He wasn't a simple man. And therefore there were many people who sided with Kairach. Machlekes is a very delicate thing, and we have to keep away from machlekes, because big people can fall into that web. So Kairach, some of the biggest tzaddikim today have a straight line up to Kairach. The Lublina, the Chayza of Lublina on Shabbos, when he used to say Torah and Pashas Kairach, used to refer to Kairach and used to say, "The Heilige Zayda Kairach," my holy grandfather Kairach. He was a descendant of Kairach. The Shla Kadesh was, the Reb Shmelke, the Reb Shetzel, the Afla, they were all descendants of Kairach. They come out from the Baal HaMa'ir, one of the great Rishonim, the Harwis family. So the Yismach Moshe remembers how he was neutral during the times of the machlekes with Kairach. And he said what else he remembered. Among the things which he remembered was when he was a little sheep by Yankov Avinu. And he showed a little mark on his back, this mark he got when Yankov Avinu once knocked his stick against his back. Come this way. And that mark remained. There was another tzaddik who lived just a little before the Yismach Moshe, the Abta Rav, the Ohev Yisrael, who also related these things which he remembered. He remembered when he was a Kohen Gadol. He remembered when he was Shlomo HaMelech. He remembered many things when he was a Reish Galusa, and he remembered when he was a sheep by Yankov Avinu, and he even remembered the tune which Yankov Avinu played on his flute to gather the sheep, and he sang it for his Talmidim. I know that tune, and we sing it for Amar Hashem Yankov. So the sheep of Yankov weren't plain, simple, common, ordinary sheep. They were Yiddish and Neshamas. And they were imprisoned by the Tumah, by the Satan, by Lavan. Lavan was the Satan, that's what the Zayah says. Lavan was Bilam. In Pashas Balak, Vayishlach el Bilam ben Ba'ayah, the Tagim Yainus and said, and he sent to Bilam, who was Lavan. Bilam was Lavan. Bilam, we know, was a very mischievous person. Well, that was Lavan. Mehararei Kedem, Menaram Yanchaini Balak Mehararei Kedem, and that's where Lavan lived. Vayelach Atze b'nei Kedem, it says in this week's Seder. So this was and in other words, Lavan had Jewish neshamas which were imprisoned by him, and he wanted to keep them and not release them so that they should be able to develop into human beings and live a life of Kedusha. And that was Yankov's mission in the house of Lavan. That's why he had to leave Eretz Yisrael, leave his family, prepare himself for this big avodah, for this great mission, by learning 14 years Torah, by Shem V'Yeva, without sleeping a wink. And then he was prepared and conditioned to go and release these neshamas from their imprisonment in the house of Lavan. So this casts an altogether different light on the Seder. Why Yankov Avinu was so interested in getting these 600,000 sheep, or these 600,000 herds of sheep. And once they were in Yankov's possession, he did work with them. He was Mekadosh them. If he had to smite one of them with a stick, like he did to the Yismach Moshe, he did so. And if he had to play a happy tune to some of them, like he did to the Aptarav, he did so. And he raised them. And he brought them up to a big madreiga, where they were transformed from sheep into humans. And just a few years later, just several years later, we find them as 600,000 Jews in Mitzrayim. These were the sheep of Yankov Avinu. Misham Raya Even Yisrael. Yankov, our past, the one that was the pasture of the sheep. So Rayenu Rayenu Kedeshenu Kedesh Yankov. So the that was Yankov Avinu's activity in the house of Lavan. And Yankov Avinu grew in the house of Lavan. He attained lofty heights, more than in the house of Shem V'Yeva, more than by his father Yitzchak, because he was Isaac in Gashmias Dika Avodah, intending to sheep and raising a family, L'Shem Shemayim, for the sake of Hashem. All for the sake of Hashem. So, this is what the Sedra of vayeitzei is all about. A Sedra which teaches us that all the activities of a Jew have to be devoted and dedicated to Hashem. And it isn't that he goes to shul puts on his talis, puts on his tefillin, gives Hashem his due, and finishes and spits by Aleinu, and he leaves the shul, and now he's going to live his life. It doesn't go that way. Going into after the preparation of Shem V'Yevel, that means after our tefillah of Shachris, with our talis and tefillin, we prepare ourselves that our work, our toil, our activities in business, and whatever we do to gain a livelihood, shall all be mekudesh, it shall all be hallowed, like the avodah of Yankov in Charan, after the preparation that we had through our talis and tefillin and tefillas hashachris. And this is the inyan of vayeitzei, and we can grow that way. A person should try and learn as much as he can, and he shouldn't employ himself in business and in industry, because he should find as much time as possible to recharge his batteries by the Gemara, by the Chumash, by the Siddur, by the Tehillim. However, when he goes to do his daily activities at his employment and in industry, he is not relieved and he's not released. Just like an animal. Now you can be a human being. Now you're not a yid anymore. Now you're a human being and act like the Goyim. On the other hand, our Torah, our tefillah, is a preparation for us that our activities, the mundane activities, the Gashmiistic activities, shall be kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. And we shall remember that Yankov Avinu's bracha is Hakeila Kadosh. Yankov Avinu, whose activities in the Torah are described as earthly activities, as he was the father of the children, he was the husband of the wives, he was the employer of so many servants who worked for him and amassed riches for him. In all these activities, we see that Ata Kadosh, V'Shimcha Kadosh, U'Gedoshim B'chol Yom Yadalucha Sada Gedoshim like Yankov, and that's what we thank and praise Hashem, that He's a Keila Kadosh, and His Kedusha is not limited, and it's not cordoned off by the doors and the walls of the Beis HaKnesses or the Beis HaMedrash. Going out of the Beis HaKnesses or going out of the Beis HaMedrash, we are going out to live a life like Yankov Avinu.
Jewish neshamas were under the control of the Lovin. These sheep that came into being, these were newborn sheep. So when we say that they were, prior to that, they were under the control of Lovin, they need to say that the sheep that Lovin had, I'm not sure if they're newborn, how are they his possession before that?
Well, I'll tell you, there is a prior history. These sheep didn't fly from heaven into Lavan's backyard. There's a reason why they were by Lavan. These sheep had a prior history before they were sheep. They were the people of Zdain. They were the people of the Daira Flaga. They were the Daira Hamabel. And then there were humans, and they were Jewish neshamas. And because they didn't behave accordingly, because they lost their status of being human beings. They became animals. And that was Yankov's mission, to raise them from that state and make them human beings again.
The question I had was how they went from being animals again back to human in Mitzrayim.
And really, that's a person's whole life work, to become a human being. Many of us, most of us, are animals. We are, we may put on a human suit and look like a human being. I think that every one of us has had the fortune or the bad fortune of meeting animals guised as people. Some of them are tigers, and some of them are lions, and some of them are serpents. There are many animals among us. And the Uriah Kadesh said that even in his time, most of the people living then were animals in the Gilgal before, and that's why they're such as a panamel. That's why they're such as a panim. That's why they don't act like human beings, because that mark which is left in them, from being animals in the Gilgal before, still is quite evident even today when they're human beings. There was this big tzaddik that this means is Kabbalah, that the president of the shul came to visit him. He was the Rav, and the president of the shul came to visit him and started going up the stairs. So the tzaddik walked into the hall and he sees him coming up the stairs. So he starts shouting to the kitchen to his wife, "What's going on over here? There's an ox coming up the stairs." Because he saw him in the image of an ox, which he really was. And this is Bemis, our avodah, this is our work in this world, to become people, to become Menschen. Nein Adam. That was the Maimar which created mankind. The Rabbi Shalom said by vayeitzei Breishis, when the world was created, Nein Adam, let us create a man. And this is what our lifelong activity should be, to create ourselves as a man and not be an animal. And any animalistic inclinations that a person has will certainly be that these are all evidence of the fact that is quite related to being to animals and to being an animal. And the idea is be a mensch. This Jewish expression, and every Jewish expression, in fact, every expression that people use, the Gemara says, when there are expressions among people, there's truth in those expressions. And we have an expression, why would you be a mensch? Why would you be a human being already? In other words, start being an animal. Yes, my friend.
I don't know if this is a question for now, but the notion that Yaakov Avinu was preparing himself for the Shechina Hadosha and the guise of Rachel, and then the guise of Leah. So I'm wondering whether the fact that Lavan pulled a switch on it, Lavan did it for Lavan's reasons. But from the standpoint of what Yaakov Avinu was doing, does that switch have any implications?
You mean that Leah came first?
Right. Well, he prepared for Rachel, then he got Leah.
Yeah. I explained it to my Sefer. Do you have my Sefer?
I certainly do, so I have to go.
It's in the Sefer. But this is going to be a session all in itself.
What you said was the Yidden, all people in Yidden say that the Shamans were once in stone. People were the Stonites.
I would say so. If not all, quite a number of them were. Adas Koyach certainly were. The Rabbeinu Bechaya says that in Pashas Koyach, that the people of Zdaim, they were the Adas Koyach, and therefore, when Koyach, they said, "Ha'einei anashim ma'im tanaka," you want to blind us. In other words, they were referring to the time that the people of Zdaim were inflicted with blindness. Hiku basan vayichem. It says, you want to repeat the same thing? You think you're going to do it to us? Okay, Rabbi, say good Shabbos and a very nice.